Everyone, to the June 2nd, 2020 Ogden City Council meeting. Please let the record reflect that all council members are present, with the exception of Vice Chair Blair, who is asked to be excused. Just trying to make sure that that's true as I scroll through everybody's name. So we'll start with approval of the minutes, and that was the regular meeting of February 4th, 2020, and that's Council Member White.
Yes, Chair Chaburka, I have reviewed those minutes and found them to be correct, and I move that we approve the above minutes.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Heyer to approve the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we have a public hearing this evening for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 tentative budget. And this is a public hearing, so we'll be able to go ahead and receive a presentation, correct?
That's correct. And then after the presentation, you can take input from anybody that would like to provide that.
Thank you, Janine.
Yeah, let me share my screen to get this started.
Should I introduce you? This is Janine Eller-Smith, the Executive Director of the Council.
Is that full screen?
Yes.
Okay. So tonight you're going to be considering adoption of the 2020-2021 tentative budget. You are required by state law to adopt a tentative budget. And as Chair Jaburka mentioned in the work session, this is something that allows the government to continue in operation if for some reason you don't adopt a budget by the end of June. So just a quick review of specific items from the council's financial principles that you've established. You've asked for conservative revenue estimates. You want the budget to be balanced, which again is required by law. You have said that employee salaries are a budget priority, and that the strategic planning always be key part of the budget process, and that you've set that reserves of at least 10% of general fund revenues as a goal. And just as a side note, for many, many years, probably most of the years I've been here, which is more than 20, the city operated at that 5% fund balance, which is required by law. And now I think you're closer, somewhere between 10 and 15%. So the city administration's made great strides with regard to that. You've also had discussions, but this isn't included in any actual documents. But we as staff have just been monitoring and keeping track of it to have an annual review of property tax revenues and have a discussion about whether or not a property tax increase is appropriate. This current budget, as Mr. Johnson also has mentioned in the work session, is a very lean budget. The priorities have been financial sustainability, particularly in light of the COVID-19 impacts, and just to maintain essential services. With regard to staffing, there are proposal of 6 new positions. One is a victim service coordinator, which would be housed in the prosecutor's office, 4 sworn police officers, and an audit inspections administrator, which is also in the police department. All of these positions are grant funded. Otherwise, I suspect that they would not be included in the budget. So also it speaks to some great work that the department directors are doing in getting those grant funds to serve Ogden. This is a year-over-year budget comparison. You've seen this before a couple of times. You can see general fund is down over 6%, primarily due to the impact that the administration is anticipating to sales tax. But overall, the total city budget is down 2.4%. You will see some increases in airport. That's because of the additional grant funds that are coming. Water and the other utilities have a slight increase in their service fees, which is just a CPI increase, which is why those are slightly increased. This is a review of the general fund, just to look at last year's adopted or I should say the current year's adopted and the proposal for FY21. And you can see significant changes in the general fund, particularly in that sales tax and franchise tax. And the only reason we have some increase in property tax is because of the expiration of a couple of RDA areas, one of which was BDO, which added a significant amount of property tax that will be coming back to the city and to the other taxing entities that participated in that redevelopment area. The budget goals that you established come straight from the strategic plan, the 5-year plan. And these are those 5 goals: economic development, community safety, recreation, city image and reputation, and fiscal sustainability and transparency. The budget does reflect those goals. As you know, the budget is a policy document as well, and it's probably the primary policy document that the council adopts. And while there is funding in all of the areas, it's not necessarily new funding. A lot of these are ongoing projects that have been in there. And so I've just kind of included items, quality neighborhoods, and some additional money for business loans, and ongoing monies for things that the city is working with, our partners, etc. Community safety. As you know, there's no, in the budget, there's currently no step or COLA increases proposed for fire, police, or for any of the city employees for that matter. But police is getting those 5 new positions. But we do working on emergency preparedness, pedestrian vehicle safety. You just saw the CIP, including additional funds for sidewalks and streets. And all of those are part of that community safety initiative. Recreation, there's some CIP projects that we just reviewed for Surge Simmons and Bonneville Park. City image and reputation, your budget priority was diversity and public engagement. There is additional money for the Neighbor Up grants, although we're not funding those right now because of the difficulty with the COVID-19. And there are those capital projects that total over $5 million. A lot of that's not city money. It comes from grants, but that's the total. Budget priority for fiscal sustainability and transparency, again, with city employees and essential services. There's no reduction in services for now, and there is some significant fleet replacement, most of which is going to the new garbage trucks that Mr. Lauder mentioned in his presentation. In the proposed Schedule A, which is adopted with the tentative budget, there are some minor changes that total $155,850. Those are really just to make a correction in the IT fund, and also then to align the major grants fund with the annual action plan. And as we've discussed and will be discussing after this meeting in the continued work session, you will have the opportunity to adopt additional changes in a Schedule A1, which will be adopted with the final budget. One thing that has come up during your work sessions is the needs for some additional review throughout the year. you have done this on a regular basis. You get a quarterly report from the comptroller's office, and those are reviewed by you. Amy still does a staff report and does a great job of breaking down those revenues and expenditures, and so that you can see what's happening with the budget. But you've asked for some additional review, additional discussion as it relates to the impacts of the COVID-19. And so we will be working those into the budget, into the calendar. So they will be called out as an agenda item so that you can have those additional discussions, get that additional report from the administration about where things are moving on a more regular and quicker pace. And then as you know, if things get better and we find that the estimates were more conservative than they needed to be, then you can consider additional appropriations if the revenues allow. So this is the budget process. You received the mayor's proposed budget on May 5th. We're a month later here to consider adopting the tentative budget. Next week, there will be the RDA and the MBA budgets, and then some additional public outreach, and the final adoption of the budget is scheduled for June 23rd. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
Any questions or comments from council members? That was very thorough. Okay, so now we'll have time for public comment. And Brandon, could you explain to folks how they might go about doing that?
Absolutely, thank you, Chair. To participate in tonight's public hearing, you have to be joining the meeting directly via Zoom. And within the application, there is an option at the bottom of the window to raise your hand. If you are joining us via telephone, which no one is, but for future reference, you can press *9, and that will raise your hand as well. Public comments or submitting public comments electronically can be done at any time at ogdencity.com/public input, as well as calling our hotline at 801-629-8158. Angel Castillo, you are the first to address the council. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Give me 1 second. All right, you're good to go.
Great, thank you. Good evening, council members, and I'd like to thank you for all the hard work that you're going to be putting into going through this budget. My biggest concern, and I understand that we need to accept this legally and that Schedule A1 will allow you to make changes, but I'd like you to be thinking about the changes that I believe absolutely need to be made. In the last City Council work session, we heard from Officer Travis Curl that the officers understand that there is a situation, a public health crisis, but we absolutely have to stay in tune with step increases. And he offered an acceptable solution of a 1% pay raise each quarter to keep them on track. I'm sure we all know how hard it is for us to keep officers, especially experienced officers, with 50% of our force having 5 years or less experience. It is imperative that we make sure that we stay in line with that step increase. I mean, I have been completely lobbying for increases beyond that so that we no longer lose officers. But if you do not stay in line with the expected 4% increase over step increase over a year, we're going to continue to lose officers, and we're going to have big challenges from that. I firmly believe that government's responsibility, first and foremost, is public safety. And I'm appalled that we are continuing to look at not meeting pay that is to be expected, and our officers are going to continue to leave in higher numbers. I know you all know this, that our officers have more calls, work harder, less money, and that's why we lose them to a larger agency. So I implore you to really take a look at that budget and to consider Officer Curl's suggestion of a 1% step increase reviewed each quarter. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other folks that like to make comment?
Chair, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And just a note that I have not received any comments about this item either. I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Oh, an alarm's going off.
Sorry about that.
Time's up. I'm happy to entertain any motions about this item.
Chair, I would make a motion then that we adopt ordinance 2020-17, adopting the tentative budget.
Second.
We got a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Nadolski to adopt the proposed ordinance 2020-17, the 20 to 21 tentative budget. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Councilmember Stevens, your mic is muted.
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye. And that passes. Thank you all. And now we'll move on to new business, the enterprise fund transfer. I'm not sure who's presenting on this item.
That would be me, Don Stein from the council office. So I'll be doing most of it. Lisa's going to jump in at the end and talk about some numbers. So let me get presentation up for you. All right, is that full screen for everybody?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to provide some background on what this item is and why it's on your agenda tonight. What you have on the agenda is the adoption of a resolution to set the public hearing for June 23rd on the utility transfers. So just a little background on what this is. So the city has been transferring money from the enterprise funds to the general fund for a very long time. A few years ago, there were some changes to the state law that required some additional notification for that transfer. So the transfer is not new, the notification is relatively new. And what this transfer and what the notification is for is there's a requirement to notify users of an enterprise fund if funds are being transferred out of that enterprise fund to the general fund or to another fund if those funds are not directly related to the operation of the fund. Now, that's kind of tricky. This is an issue that a lot of you have heard about, that a lot of constituents have talked to you about. When we did the utility rate study in 2012, we talked about this issue a lot. This is what we often refer to as the 17%. The 17% transfer out of these utility funds into the general fund. And there are two parts to that, actually three parts to that. So we'll talk mostly about the franchise tax and the property tax, but we'll talk just briefly about some of the administrative and overhead transfers. So what this language means, talking about a purpose directly related to the operation of the funds, the administrative transfer, the administrative portion of that transfer doesn't require notification because it provides payment for things like human resources and IT and legal and all of those other things that a separate utility would have to provide on their own if they were not part of the city. So that administrative share, that does not have to be noticed. What does have to be noticed is this fee in lieu transfer that we have that we consider in the place of franchise tax collection and property tax collection. So it's that portion that's being noticed. So just a quick overview of what an enterprise fund is in local government, municipal budgeting. An enterprise fund is a fund that's accounted for separately. It's still part of the city, but it's accounted for individually, and it's intended to support itself through user fees. So sometimes you'll hear this as we try to run these like a business or something. You know, that's kind of an oversimplification, but that kind of gets you the idea. So for example, the water utility, we want the water utility to operate using the revenue it generates from water rates. And so that's what an enterprise fund is. And we've got more enterprise funds than these four listed, but this transfer deals with the four that are listed here. So water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and refuse. So when we talk about these utilities and we talk about wanting to operate these utilities as we would any other utility, particularly when it comes to franchise taxes and property taxes, if you look at Dominion and Rocky Mountain Power, both of those utilities pay a franchise tax and a property tax. Their property tax calculation is a little bit different than the average homeowner. They don't go through the county and pay their taxes in November like you or I would. Their process is different. They go through the centrally assessed process through the state. That property tax gets determined, gets remitted to the city. But in the end, we do get both franchise tax and property tax from those other utilities. So as I mentioned, our intent is to operate those city utilities as separate utilities. So this transfer of this 6% franchise tax, 6% property tax acts as our collection or a fee in lieu of those taxes. So when we talk about the impact of that transfer, the total amount proposed for transfer, and this is the maximum amount proposed that could be transferred, doesn't necessarily mean that this is the amount that's going to be transferred. Obviously, a lot depends on economic conditions, but this is the most that's proposed. So the most that could be proposed with in the budget is $5.4 million. And this is purely a policy decision. The transfer is not required, but the notification is required. So this is something that you could change, you could not do it, you could fund it a different way. We like to show this example. If you did not want to make this transfer, if you chose to leave it in the utility fund and chose to make up that money somewhere else, you could make it up through property tax or other fees or something else. If it were collected through property tax, so if the funds were left in the enterprise funds and the utility funds, and that $5.4 million was made up in property tax, you can see in the proposed budget for FY21 that the property tax that we're estimating, just the straight property tax, there's another line for delinquent taxes, which brings that number up a little bit. That's $15.7 million. So you can see what that would do to property taxes if we took that 15.7 and then needed to add another $5.4 million onto that to make that up. So it'd be a pretty substantial increase in property taxes. And again, as a public policy matter, there's always pros and cons to doing things the way that we would want to do them. One of the things that we look at when we look at this transfer, as opposed to just shifting it to property taxes, there are a lot of entities, a lot of property owners in the city that do not pay property taxes. So educational institutions, religious institutions, other government institutions, they don't pay property tax. And so the burden would actually be shifted and would be higher on individuals and businesses if we shifted and tried to make up this $5.4 million through property taxes, because everybody who does pay property tax would have to pay the share for all the people who don't pay property taxes. So we see this as a way to kind of broaden the base a little bit with the collection or the contribution to the general fund. Because of course, any of those institutions, even if they don't pay property taxes, we would of course provide municipal services like police and fire to all of those groups. And so they may not pay property taxes, but all of them pay a water bill. And so, like I said, this is a way that we've seen to broaden the base a little bit in that collection. And as I mentioned, if these utilities were independent, like Dominion or Rocky Mountain Power, we would actually receive the franchise taxes and the property taxes. So if there are any questions, just jump right in and let me know. I wanted to add a quick word about the arts transfers. And this is mostly a note to say that there are no transfers for art transfers coming out of the utilities. For quite a long time, you can see from 96 to 2016, there was a transfer made from the utility funds to the capital improvement fund for public art. And a lot of times we referred to this as the 1% for arts or the percent for arts program. And it was designed so that 1% of the cost of the capital project would be designated for public art. Well, as I mentioned, with public policy, there are pros and cons to doing things different ways. There were some issues with the way that this was being done. There were some changes made to the ordinance in 2016 that changed the method of collection. So instead of 1% of the actual cost, it was a historical average that was transferred out of these utility funds into the capital improvement fund to pay for public art. Well, we did that for a couple of years, and then we changed the way, we changed the funding source for that. So we stopped transferring funds, even that historical average, out of utilities, and instead drew it out of BDO lease revenue. So we did that last year in 2019 for the 2020 budget. So in the current budget we're in right now, there was no transfer from the utility funds to the capital improvement fund for public art. It was funded through BDO, and that's what's proposed for the FY21 budget as well. So that had gotten a lot of attention over the years, so I wanted to include that to answer that question if it did come up. So the public hearing on this item is a little bit different than most of your other public hearings. So the state law requires that you as the legislative body hold a separate public hearing. So you're going to hold a public hearing for the final budget, but this public hearing has to be separate from that. But what's different is that there's no action that you're going to take as a result of this public hearing, as a direct result. So you'll hold the public hearing on June 23rd, take comment, but you won't take any action on this specific item. What happens is those transfers are incorporated into the proposed final budget, and you would then take action on the final budget. So that would essentially be your approval of these transfers. And as state law requires, we will send a follow-up notice letting people know what the final number is that's approved in the budget if you decide to change that. So from here, I'll let Lisa jump in and talk about some of the specific accounting data that is also required by state code.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. When we propose the 12% that is accounted as transfers, we look at the charges for services revenue in each of the funds listed: water, sanitary, storm, and refuse. And we calculate the 6% for franchise and the 6% for property based on the charges for services revenue budgeted in each of those funds. Glenn mentioned earlier that the proposal is a maximum. At year end, we will do a look back and make sure that those funds received the revenue projected through the budget. If we need to, we reduce the amount of the transfer, but again, these are maximum amounts that would be transferred to the general fund. State law also requires us to disclose the amount, the percent of expenditures that these transfers account for in each of the fund's budgets. Those are listed to the side. They range between almost 10.5% to just under 12%. These amounts are similar to last year. These funds have been healthy and steadily increasing. So the amount of the increase is just based on the CPI increase that is planned for the utility rates. Do you have any questions regarding the accounting data?
Any questions from council members?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Glenn, for such a thorough explanation.
Hey, who sends this out? Because I got one in my bill. I just wondered who is in charge of sending these out?
Whether I want to admit it or not, I generally write it with the help from some other folks to make sure I don't screw anything up or say anything wrong. And we generally tweak it every year. But I generally write it with the help of others, and then Tracy helps with sending it out. So we get that coordinated with the utility bill. And as you all know, the utility billing is a quarter per week each month. And so it takes 4 weeks to get everybody the notice. But generally, I write it.
It's nice. I got mine, and I'm awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Glenn, and I don't know if I want to admit this, but I do want to admit that I do paperless billing, but do you send this out to every customer in the mail, even if they are only online?
As far as I understand, if the person gets electronic billing, they would get it that way as well. Yeah. So it's not a separate mailing to people who do e-billing.
Good. I didn't want to admit that I didn't open my mail. Just in case. Great, so this is an item I'm happy to take action on if anybody would like to pose one.
Chair Traberka, I'll make that motion then that we adopt Resolution 2020-13.
So
Second.
we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White to adopt the resolution to set the public hearing for June 23rd, 2020. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And next we have the final budget for 2021. And this is to set a public hearing.
Yes, Chair Chaburka, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd just like to make another shorter presentation. Give me just a second to share that screen. Okay, so this is the action before you tonight is to set the public hearing for June 23rd on the final budget. So I'm going to just do a real quick overview of the final budget. We just had a presentation on the tentative budget. Obviously, there's not been any changes from 5 minutes ago. So priority for the final budget is financial sustainability and maintenance of essential services. We have year-over-year budget comparisons. Most of the funds are generally down except for the utilities, and the general fund itself is down significantly. You still have your budget goals that were established in the 5-year plan, and there are currently no proposed changes for the Schedule A1, but we do have a couple of opportunities between now and then to have some discussions and determine whether you would like to include some changes in that Schedule A1. Again, we're going to be doing some additional review of the budget throughout the year. to make sure that to determine whether the revenues are tracking with the projections or whether they were overly or under estimated. And now I'm really happy to share this with you. I think Brandon has worked very hard the last year to get this budget process explained in 3 minutes, this cute little video. So I'm going to show this for you. It's about 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Fiscal the Budget Bot, and I'm here to show you how Ogden City's budget works and how you can participate in the budget process as an Ogden resident. First off, when we talk about the city's budget, we're not just talking about dollar amounts that determine how much the city spends in each department, but we're also talking about a policy document that reflects the priorities of Ogden City and also serves as a planning tool for the future. By law, the council needs to have a budget in place for the start of the fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. But there is a lot that happens in the year leading up to that moment. First, the mayor meets with the directors from each department who present their priorities and what they need in order to be successful and provide an acceptable level of service that Ogden residents expect. Then, the mayor presents the proposed budget to the city council based on those departmental needs and anticipated revenues. From there, the council members review the budget and can adjust it as they see fit in order to meet their established priorities and to ensure the city can operate efficiently. Throughout this process, there are several public hearings held to allow residents and business owners to voice their opinions on what the city's priorities should be. In order to have a budget, you need income, right? So where does the city's revenue come from? If you guessed your taxes, you're right, but only partly. Taxes, including sales and property, account for about 66% of the city's total revenue. The city has other sources of revenue such as utility rates, grants, licenses, permits, interest, etc. In the budget, the city operates using 3 types of funds. The first is the general fund. The revenue for the general fund comes from taxes, fees, and the like, and is used to support departments like fire, police, community development, and public services, which includes things like road maintenance and snow removal, along with many others. The second type of fund is an internal service fund. These funds are part of the general fund, but are accounted for a little differently. Some departments, such as IT, fleet, and risk management, are set up differently from other departments because they provide services for other departments within the city. For example, if a city employee uses a city vehicle from fleet for travel on city business, the fleet department charges that employee's department for use of the vehicle. The third type of fund is an enterprise fund. Departments that operate as an enterprise fund, such as water and sewer utilities, golf courses, and the airport, are all owned by the city but are meant to support themselves with the fees they charge customers for their services. Hopefully that helps make the budget a little easier to understand. To stay up to date on where the council is in the budget process and to learn more about when and where you can have your voice heard in this process, follow the City Council on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also visit the council's website at council.ogdencity.com. If you want to contact the council office, send an email to citycouncil@ogdencity.com or give us a call at 801-629-8153 during regular business hours.
So I think Brandon did an awesome job on that. So everybody give him a standing ovation, or at least a sitting ovation.
Way to go, Brandon.
That was awesome.
That was great.
Bot.
Yeah, I recognize that voice.
Yeah, so that's going to go on the council's website, obviously. And Brandon, his next project for the next coming year is to get it translated into Spanish so that it will be available to the Spanish-speaking residents in our city. So with that, the recommendation is to take action to set the public hearing on the final budget for June 23rd.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions for Janine? Great, so I'd be happy to take any action on that.
Chair, I would propose that we adopt ordinance 2020-19. And Brandon, you did a great job.
I second.
Actually, it's not adopting, it's setting the public hearing. So
Setting the public hearing.
mhm.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Stevens and a second by Councilmember Lopez to set the public hearing for proposed ordinance 2020-19 for June 23rd, 2020. And this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. And up next is salary schedules. I'm guessing that's you as well, Janine?
That is me.
It's your night. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have just a really brief presentation, if I can find it. For some reason, it's not showing up on my screen. Hang on just a second. There we go. Okay, so I'll just briefly review for you the salary schedules. Again, the action is just to set the public hearing for June 23rd. This is a separate public hearing on the salary schedules, but the salary schedules are also adopted as are included with the final budget as an attachment. So when we say salary schedules, we're essentially outlining the pay schedules for the city employees. So we have 4 different schedules. One is the non-merit special, which includes elected officials, most all of the managerial positions, council and mayoral staff, the judges, and the attorneys. And then we have the merit schedule, which is all other city employees that are non-sworn officers. And then police and fire each have their own separate salary schedules. The salary schedule ordinance also adopts some related items regarding benefits for employees, and it notes any reclassifications. So this is, there's 2 reclassifications, one in the city council office, one in management services. There recognizes those 6 new positions. It outlines that there is no COLA or merit increases, as we've discussed. It addresses health insurance. There was an increase in health insurance this year of 8%. For all of those employees which are on the health savings plan, which is the majority of employees, the city will pick up that 8% increase. Those on the traditional health plans will have to pick up that increase. And then in addition, it picks up the tier 2 requirement increases. The city was going to pick up all of that. So that's the salary schedules. I don't know if you have any questions regarding those.
Any questions? If there are no questions or comments, we could consider some motion language on that.
Okay, Chair, I will make a motion that we set the public hearing for June 23rd on proposed ordinance 2020-20.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White to set the public hearing for June 23rd, 2020 for proposed ordinance 2020-20. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. Thank you. And finally, we come to the written public comments part of our meeting. And we did receive 4 written public comments this week. And those related to the Canyon Road development, a constituent asking again about the development on Maxfield Drive. And then another constituent talking about noise challenges they're having with the Mr. Car Wash on Washington Avenue, which I think we're already addressing. And then condolences from North Ogden City Council member Philip Swanson for Officer Lyday. And then another constituent that was asking for a city response to the protest on May 30th. So those are the 4 comments. I'm not sure if anybody would like to address or comment about those.
Chair, I think I saw a response that the mayor or administration is looking into some of those comments, but they just have not had time to be able to look at it due to the incidences that we've had in the last week or so. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so, especially in relation to the Mr. Car Wash. I had a constituent reach out to me that was different than this person, and I responded to them. And then yes, the administration said they would help to sort that out when we have the ability to do so.
Thank you.
Chair, I've been talking to some of this residents here on around 12th Street and Maxfield Drive, and there is a real concern about that project that is being proposed at the mouth of Ogden Canyon on 12th Street. And I'm not in favor of that project, but I understand that the planners had heard it, and I think they were going by what the plan was and what ordinances they had involved, but they were concerned that it would impact the area considerably, and I think it will. So,
thanks, Doug. Okay. Oh, did somebody else have a comment? Okay, and now we'll ask if Mayor Caldwell, if you'd like to make any general comments.
I do have some comments to make, and excuse me if I get emotional about this, because it's been a hard week. But what our team has done in the last week has been amazing. With the loss of one of our officers on Thursday, and the riots and everything else, our guys have shown up in the most amazing in the most amazing way. You know, we got a call out for support and help with what was happening in Salt Lake City, and they let everything go to roll in and help manage what was happening with our state capitol and everything that was going on down there. And I'm sorry, I'm so proud of what our men and women did when our state came into crisis. They showed up, they rolled in, they took care of things, and it's been overwhelming to see how this team of people have come together. And I would put our team up against any in the state when it comes to dealing with crises and everything else. You look at this beautiful soul, Nathan Lede, showed up at a domestic violence call on Thursday. It was a terrible situation. We saw the vigil. We saw all the state come together to support him, to move through that, to support it and everything else. Had no idea what was coming on next. And what we saw happen in Salt Lake did not happen in Ogden. Did not happen in Ogden at all. And I'm proud of this community for being able to have those conversations and to be a part of this and to welcome each other. And we're blessed that we have a community that is a community. It's not a big city. It's not somewhere where you can be anonymous and throw bombs and do everything else. We know the people that own the businesses here, the restaurants and everything else. And everybody showed up on Saturday and did it respectfully, honorably, and they built bridges. They didn't drive wedges. And I'm proud of how that worked. You know, this is my second run through of losing one of our own employees, and it's devastating. But the way this community continues to show up, support each other, and take care of each other there's no place like it. So I mentioned that we sent 20 plus officers down to Salt Lake when people were defacing our Capitol and abusing police and everything else, and they rolled right in. No thoughts, anything else. They took it on the chin when they should have been planning for one of their brothers that got taken down on Thursday, 2 days before. The call came in, they put their gear on, they went down, they took care of business. And then that night we had a fire at the mouth of the canyon. And we had 30 engines that were out there ripping through that. Our engineers and everybody else were moving water, taking care of everything that went around that. I'm just amazed at the city staff and honored to represent them. And I had notes from the state, the governor's office, the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, everybody else saying, thank you guys for what you're doing. This is amazing. You guys are a model for what's happening in our community at the moment, giving people space to do things, but making sure that everybody stays safe and everything else. I'm so proud of these men and women that represent Ogden City. And we just have an amazing team here. And I appreciate being able to work with you all. And, you know, we've had department director meetings where everybody's cried and everybody's been overwhelmed at this because this is unprecedented in spite of what's happened in the last 3 months. After all the economic work and effort we put into trying to make all of our salary schedules come online, we've worked really hard to do all this economic development and bring us to a place where we can do this. And then, 3 months ago, that just kind of got scrubbed. And it's just been a hard time. But in the last week, what these men and women have done that work for Ogden City is, in my opinion, unprecedented. And if anybody wants to complain about that and the effort that's gone into this, I'd be more than happy to have conversations with them. But I am more proud of this team working for Ogden City now than I've been with anything I've ever done in my life. And it really matters. It really matters. And I'm sorry to get so emotional. Nobody likes to see or have to do that publicly, but this is going to be amazing. And we got a couple more days. I hope you all take the opportunity to come and pay your respects and see how this community comes together to support one of our own. There's been nothing like it. And this is my second run through that. And it's devastatingly emotional and bring lots of tissues. And I know everybody will appreciate your support, but thank you for what you're doing. This has been the hardest budget ever because we had it all lined up. We were ready to take care of all of our people, and we had worked really hard to get to that point, and everything just got kind of turned on its end. And I just need you to know how much we appreciate your patience, your sacrifice. And I want to just say that to our public safety and all of our public servants that work for Ogden City. These guys are amazing. And I've never been more honored to be a part of something so special. And I'll stop ugly crying on that note.
Thank you so much, Mayor Caldwell. I mean, yeah, I'm really impressed and just really respect you all so much for everything you've been doing over the past months. Really dealing with the pandemic, and then all of this rolling through has got to be quite a strain. And yeah, we appreciate your work so much. Just a note, I did just see that the press release went out for the announcement of the candlelight vigil for Officer Nate Day. So everybody should be aware that that information will be coming out so that the whole community will be able to honor his service as well. Any council members like to make any comments?
I can go first.
Please.
Very, very quickly. I just want to tell the mayor that I echo his sentiment. Mayor, you're a first-class mayor, and we have first-class staff in this city, and we have a first-class community. So seriously, thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Chair, if I could follow Luis.
Yes.
Mayor, you're a first-class man as well. Appreciate you sharing your heart, your soul, all of your character with this community. And the same goes for everybody who works in the administration. My heartfelt sympathies to the family and to OPD. I really can't imagine how a department can handle more, but also handle it with more grace. And it's when things like this happen, I think it's time for everybody to reflect on the things that really are important. And in the roles that we serve, it's not politics that are important. And sometimes we even think that it's the policies that we pass that are most important, but that's not the case either. The most important thing are the people that we serve with. That's all of you guys. The people that we serve with in the administration. We have first-class men and women across the board, and I just wanted to say that I love each and every one of you guys, and that OPD, the family, the administration have my full heartfelt support and love and gratitude. So thanks for everything you guys are doing, and thanks for everything that you are.
Thank you. Any other council member comments?
Here, I'd like to follow Ben there. I too would like to thank the mayor for his comments. He gives us a tone that we can all look toward, and we appreciate what comments he made. As I read the bio of Nate, his career was cut short at age 24. He had great potential in serving the citizens of Ogden in our police department. He wanted to be a policeman. That was his desire. He enjoyed that. But the most important thing, he set the example. He set the example for others to follow. He's the type of individuals that we are looking for our policemen. And I believe we've got many of our Ogden Police Department in that same category, in that same mold that Nate had. But he showed us that the direction that we can be and what we ought to be. He set the standard, not only for the young guys coming up, but maybe for us that have been around a while. And he wanted to serve. He'll be greatly As we traveled up 25th Street going home the night when we had the rally here in Ogden, we noticed that 25th and Washington was blocked off between 25th and 26th. And I thought, well, what's happening? Then I realized that it was the rally that we had there. And as I came home and watched the proceedings on KSL, I saw several of our Ogden police cars going into the City Creek complex to secure that complex. And I was very proud of our men and women stepping up to the service of not only protecting our capital city, but still showing the type of standards that we have in the Ogden Police Department. I would just like to thank Monique Dale for his comments, and I just would like to address that. He said, I want to set the tone, and I think that was the key that Monique had. An Ogden activist and the rally organizers, Monique Dale, told the crowd at the beginning of Saturday event, this is a peaceful protest. This is not an anti-cop rally. This is a solitary rally. This is a rally for police reform. I think we have the beginnings, and I hope we move forward in a very, very aggressive way, both administration, council, and the various groups in Ogden to move in a direction that we can start doing the things that need to be done or should be done, but not everything will be accomplished. But there are some good ideas that we need to review and maybe look at. And so I'm appreciative of those comments because he set the tone for the type of rally that we had here in Ogden. On Channel 5 that evening, they interviewed the Northern Utah Black Lives Matter representative, and she says, I was in Ogden, and she told that it was very peaceful here in Ogden. She told them exactly what transpired here in Ogden that did not transpire in our state capital. And I'm very appreciative of the rally that we had here in Ogden, Utah. That evening, my wife says, is there someone burning something? And we looked up on the hill, and the hill was completely consumed there on 12th Street and mouth of the canyon. We went up and took a look at that fire that was up there, and our firefighters were there jolly on the spot, doing the things that needed to be done to protect the property and the well-beings of those citizens in that area. And two, they are an addition to our quality of our public service and safety people. These two groups, the fire and the police, is not exempt from what other employees we have in Ogden City. We have the same type of characters, the same type of employees in all of our departments. And they conduct themselves in a very professional manner. That's why we are accomplishing some of the things that we need to accomplish in Ogden. That's why we are striving to improve the things that we need to improve here in Ogden. And we will achieve our goals of continuing to make Ogden a better place to live. So I'm too, along with the mayor, very proud of all of our employees. I'm very proud of our council staff and what they do for us in preparing this budget. This is not an easy budget. This is very difficult because our resources are depleted. But and if we could do more for our employees, I'm sure we would like to do that. So I'm pleased with living here in Ogden, Utah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevens. Any other comments from council members?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to take just a moment if I could. I was getting ready to leave town on Thursday when the notices came out about the shooting incident, and it was very close to home for my wife and I. Turns out that it happened in the home next to one of my best friends, where his parents still live, and across the street from the home that my wife grew up in, where she and I dated, and where her parents lived until just a few years ago also. So it was just really close to home. My son-in-law being in law enforcement also, you realize how delicate and fragile some of the plans that you might make are. Nate Lyday, I'm sure he had a lot of plans for the future that are not going to come to fruition now, and I'm very sorry for that. And like the mayor, I get a little misty when I talk about stuff like this too, so if you'll just bear with me also. Then on Saturday, we were still out of town, and we're watching the news about Salt Lake and the riots and the anarchy that was going on down there, and just it was embarrassing. It was counterproductive. There was nothing that you could say was good about what was going on down there. And then to wake up on Sunday and learn what happened in Ogden, in contrast, it just made me proud that our community held it together and kept the values that I think are here. I hope we can build on those things in the future, come together with love and unity with one another, people of all groups. And I, like Ben, want to express my love to each of you. Thanks for who you are, and let's go forward together.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll go quickly because everything has been said, but I think a lot of times Ogden and we actually self-proclaim our grittiness. And a lot of times people think that that's, just maybe more like grit and mud and, have been down, really had our hands really in the middle of things and being all dirty. But I'm just going to say that we have shown such courage and resolve and strength, and our character in Ogden is so awesome. I appreciate everything that both our administrative team has done, to the heroes of the public safety, to the unsung heroes, those that were pushing out social media posts and tweeting. So we're just, I think we just are freaking awesome if we go back to that tagline. And I'm proud to be part of this community. And Councilmember Stevens, I agree with you that we have a group of community members that also understand that and understand that they can get a lot done if they work with us. And the protest was great, and they were very respectful, and Malik was very awesome in helping with that, and Miss Betty Sawyer as well. And I just think that group of community members were just displayed an awesome character as well. And sometimes we all butt heads, but man, that was just it was way better than the guy that pulled out his bow and arrow down in Salt Lake. So I do appreciate what that group did and what our team is doing here. So nothing more than everybody's already said.
I think everybody's spoken, right? I don't want to leave anybody out. I guess I just want to quickly echo all the sentiments that have been said, but also I really, I want to point out that I sent Chief Watt a letter of, a little text of appreciation because I feel like he showed true leadership in many ways in our community. But in this case, talking directly with the organizers of the protest and talking about how he wanted to be involved and help to bring in other agencies too, to help to make sure that people have their constitutional right of being able to protest peacefully, and then making sure to sing the different officers from different agencies, sing our own undercover officers going through the crowd to make sure. I mean, for me, I was there also as an observer to make sure, because I've heard about the agitators or these other kinds of influences that were happening, and just to be there as a witness to make sure that those things weren't happening. And I felt, I think that everybody made it clear that the police were there not to be against the group, but there to help support and to, help to make sure that it was a safe event. And I just appreciated that so much. And I do appreciate the comments that some of you folks have said around, it takes a lot of courage for communities to come together in that way. And I hope that we can take, because I guess want to say that it's not like it was a love fest down there, right? People have things to say that are really, really painful, and they feel overwhelming because there are systems that have been created over time. It's not about necessarily an individual act, but it's about these systems that have come to being that we often recreate because we don't know another way to work, right? So we need to think about other ways to work and think about, as public servants, how we can have the courage maybe to ask some of those questions. And I know you all have that courage because I've been with you when you've done that. But just to really think about that dynamic of folks that maybe have come to the council and tried to, to speak to us, but then have disagreements with us, but then have these mutual respect for one another, that we want to have these dialogues and really move things forward to make change actually happen. And I'm sure that this is a group of people that is willing and able to do that. It's tough. It's tough to face these things in light of also all the drama and controversy that happens at the same time too. So I appreciate serving with you all, and I appreciate everything that you've said. And I hope that we can continue these conversations too. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, with that, I think we can adjourn. We have just a couple other things to talk about in the work session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Was that Councilmember Stevens, I think?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so a motion to adjourn by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Stevens. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.